Here we go. And I think we are live. Hopefully we'll get people sort of joining us as they notice the link go up. I'm delighted to be able to be joined by Rick. I've had the pleasure of having a great conversation with Rick the Ukrainian on the channel before. Many of you will know his extraordinary fundraisers that deliver huge results for Ukraine. And are incredibly important at this time. We are both taking part in the Trucks for Ukraine, Trucks Under the Christmas Tree campaign. This is part of our daily stream. We got another one coming on later this afternoon with Jonathan MS and Andrew Mercado. So we're really going all out to make sure we complete and get that purchase of at least one truck on Silicon Curtain. But the entire campaign is for a bunch of trucks. What is the total amount? Is it 15 or 25? It's quite a big target we've got for the sort of community of YouTubers, isn't it?
It's 150,000 euros for all of us, and well, that's an ambitious goal, but you already almost reached 50%. Yeah. So, especially looking how Jonathan is doing, Jonathan MS Pierce, I mean.
Jonathan MS, yeah.
Yeah, so now, first of all, yeah, I want to say hello to you, Jonathan, and as I always show this as when I'm greeting people, you know, it's live long and prosper. Yeah. But now, you usually say it when you kind of say goodbye, but I also say it when, you know, to welcome people or to just greet them. And thank you for the warm introduction. And, you know, it's really cool that we are doing this fundraiser, this big one for 150,000 altogether, and you're a part of this team. What I just am right now, I took so many campaigns and doing them simultaneously. So this one is not going really fast. Right now we have approximately 3,000 euros of the needed 20,000, because I aimed for 2 trucks right away, since we're usually doing 20,000 in about 3 weeks. So it seemed totally possible to me, but as I told you, and I'll say it right away, not in details, but we started the big campaign with the 69th Sniffing Brigade, with Roman Trochimets and the Lenivka community. We launched the big one for 90,000 euros. And yeah, I actively am promoting that one since I finished it first, and I'm thinking of either somehow boost this campaign being here on your stream and on stream of our friends who are also part of this fundraiser, like Andrew Mercado, Jonathan MS Pierce, let's say Philip also, maybe he invites me. We were joking about it on the Shills. They are also a part of this. Starsky, let's hope he will fully join it, because I think, I don't know if it's private information or not, why he's still not on the show together with us. But yeah.
I think he's moving house or something is what I heard. So that may not be, particularly sensitive, but I think, having challenges of getting internet set up and various other things there. So
he would give, he would give this team a big boost, and in all senses, like he's really motivating. Keith Kane, it's great to see everyone working together to help the brave men and women at the front. Unity brings victory. Thank you, Keith. Keith is one of the rollers, and we have a lot of rollers there in the chat. Welcome, everyone. I think a lot of rollers are the fans of yours and your interviews. You're doing a great job, Jonathan. Thank you for advocating for Ukrainian. You always amaze me how good you are orienting in okay, let's say it right away, Russians.
Yes.
You basically understand what this nation is, and you always amaze me at how you talk about them. I am very harsh to Russians, and I really think of them the worst way, as most of the Ukrainians do, because we had to deal with them for many centuries, and it's the same story all over again. They are invading us. They are committing genocide against us. They they were not turned into these selfless. initiative-less creatures by just Putin and his propaganda. They were like that for centuries, and nothing basically changes. It's the same story in different shapes. It could be a Russian Empire, they could be communists, they could be the so-called Russian Federation, but the point never changes. And so I am just always amazed by how you think more like Ukrainian than like a Westerner, because a lot of people on the West put some hopes for Russians and think that they may do or make some uprising in their country. Well, Jonathan Pierce thinks so. He believes in that possibility, but I don't believe. And you also at the previous stream, when was it? Just a few days ago, right?
It was a few days. It was on Monday. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
It's not going to happen. I mean, it's clearly not going to happen. And I think, there's a big difference. I mean, there are people who seem to really understand the mindset quite well without speaking Russian or really having sort of, been there and immersed themselves. And I'm always very impressed by people who kind of figure that out. I mean, I had the privilege is the word that pops in my head, but I'm not sure that's the word I'm looking for. I've had quite a lot of exposure there, and lived and traveled in Mordor, for want of a better word, between 1992 and 1998. So that's the period where it was exposed. It's like seeing some sort of crude machine, but you've ripped the covering off and you can see all the cogs turning. And I've got quite a good memory for sort of conversations as well, having studied literature and been really interested in sort of dialogue and plays and so on. I tend to remember a lot of the conversations, or I tend to remember little spots of conversations that I had with hundreds of Russians in the 90s. And I think whereas the kind of propaganda that we're seeing now has only just come into the consciousness of many people now, I heard echoes of that in that pre-Putin era. I heard disturbing echoes of these kind of mythologies and lies that people would not just be told by the regime or the KGB, although they have a role in crafting that. But these are then lies that people, it flatters their ego. It's things that makes the world seem safer and more comprehensible to them. So they then share these mythologies amongst themselves without questioning it, almost like sort of religious mantras. So I've got all that memory of these sort of conversations in my head. The other aspect, of course, is being able to understand, Russian sources in the original, not just listen to some of the sort of diaspora commentators. We mentioned Michael Naki, who's one of the best, if not the best of them, but also listening to those who perhaps are not quite so good, that still have some of these imperial narratives, or there's other class, I think, of Russian opposition who think or pretend to think more like Westerners. They'll also come out with some of these naive statements. And it makes me think, hang on, do you guys even know your own country? Do you guys, have you even spoken or mixed with the great unwashed of your own people? It kind of seems not. But that all that stuff helps.
Yeah, I want to ask you, have you invited, because I see you invite Russians to your interviews, and what is the percentage of them, of those who you invited, is like that, who pretends to be a Westerner and doesn't even understand their country, their own country? What do you think, how many of them are...
Well,
really
I've got
like
to admit
Michael Naki?
Yeah, I've got to admit, I'm not a journalist, I'm an activist. So in the first instance, I've decided pretty early on that I won't invite people who are not experts in their field, and I won't invite people on who repeat any of the propagandistic stuff. So it doesn't mean that I agree with everybody, absolutely not. But if I feel that they're being authentic to their own understanding of the world, I think that's kind of important. So already this excludes huge numbers of people. But I'll admit to you, I mean, I tend to invite people on who are really buying into more of a decolonization narrative, who are buying into the idea that Russia is a toxic empire that first and foremost inflicts pain and suffering on its neighbors, but they will also voice the view that while Russia continues as an imperial entity, it doesn't do its own people any favors either. It smothers and crushes them, controls them, and doesn't allow any kind of organic cultural politics to emerge. So generally, the people I get on board, they're all kind of signed up to the most extreme. If you look at the Russian spectrum, most extreme point of view, they're much closer to the Ukrainian point of view already. That's just the way it is. And many of them, of course, are academics and scientists. So I'm bringing them on because they are experts in a particular political arena in terms of deconstructing the Russian political system. So I wouldn't ask them questions about Ukraine. I wouldn't ask them questions about Ukrainian culture. I wouldn't do what, unfortunately, many Russians, for instance, Masha Gesin and others fall into, is they can be quite compelling, when you tackle them on the expertise and the things they've directly experienced, when you ask them about the mechanics of the Russian system. But then, what journalists tend to do is then ask them about Ukrainians. Well, that's entirely inappropriate to ask, let's say, a Russian about Maidan or anything like that. And this is both the fault of the journalist and it's the fault of the guest, who are far too willing to go outside of their area of expertise. But I'll be honest with you, the number of Russians on the channel is now in the tens. But that's out of a population of whatever it is, 100 plus million, 120, 140 million. So we're talking about a tiny fraction of less than 1% of I think, representative people in the country. So it's a very, very selective kind of thing. And even then, I will only ask them to talk about areas which I feel they are, competent to do so. So I frame the narrative on many of the interviews just by my choice of questions.
Okay, thank you. And I have a follow-up question. I'm so curious to, kind of research your work a bit here and get the answers from you using this opportunity. Since we don't have any geopolitical topics to discuss, we can deep dive into actually the Russian different society, also that in immigration and their political views, and a lot of them are following the narratives of imperialism and that Russia should not be decolonized. But as you told me, you tend to invite those of them who want to see Russia decolonized. But I also wonder, how do you know that? Do you watch some interviews with them and see that they are using certain points that are indicating that they want Russian decolonization? How do you do that?
I will look at their writings. Yeah, I'll look at for the detailed questions, I might look at articles they've written or papers they've written or co-written. But in order to do that first screening process, I'll look at their social media output. So what have they written on Facebook? What have they written in Russian, not just in English? What have they written in terms of, Twitter, LinkedIn, etc.? I'll just do a quick trawl of what they've said over the last year or so. And then I'll go to things like Muckrack, which is an online database which shows all the journalistic output. So what publications are they written for, if any? What have they said? What have they said in publications and articles going back 10 years? Or specifically go back to 2014 and see if there's any comments or articles around the time of the first Crimea invasion. Because I want to know, have they changed their point of view? Or in many cases, a lot of the Russian academics I interviewed left around that time. I think this is a really critical indicator. If they left following the full-scale invasion, it's like, okay, but why now? If they left in 2014, then and it's on political grounds, and I think, okay, but that's interesting already, because they're part of a tiny minority who, one, saw what was really going on, and two, already objected to Russian acting like a 19th or 18th century imperial, autocracy, sort of mashup of Tsarism and Stalinism. So if they've taken that principle down in 2014, I'm like, well, this is already someone who's quite interesting because they are extremely rare. I mean, one of the interviews, there's the guy called Alexander Etkind. He left in 2003 because he already felt things were going in the wrong direction. I mean, that's very early on in Putin's cycle. So it also happens that a lot of the academics are Jewish as well. And I think having been, only partially accepted in Soviet society and having had restrictions put on them in terms of academia and certainly restrictions on, how they would even express anything resembling, a sort of, a Jewish culture, and almost sort of feeling, yes, you're part of the Soviet Union and Russia, but also you're not. You're partially outside of it. I think that would often give people the perspective to question their own society, their own system, and of course, we know there's a strong academic tradition in Jewish culture as well. But also, just by being defined as an outsider, I think that for some people will create an impetus to try and excel, prove people wrong, prove the system wrong, prove the how should you say, the deep-seated anti-Semitism and bias against them wrong. It's just one of those sort of mechanics. So yeah, a lot of the people I interview happen to be that. Then there's another class of people I have conversations with, but don't make it onto the channel. And that's kind of quite interesting. So one of those figures, for instance, I had a fascinating conversation with Mikhail Khodorkovsky, but he's not confident in his English. He doesn't do interviews in English, and I guess he wouldn't feel that my audience is his audience. He also said that he doesn't necessarily want to impose himself on Ukrainians because he's aware that the Ukrainians at this time don't necessarily want to hear the opinions of Russians. I thought that was quite an interesting thing for someone like him to say, almost quite a humble thing, actually. Whatever you might think of him as a person.
A good compliment to him, right?
I mean, it's interesting. It's unusual. And every time someone who's Russian says something unusual, which seems to counter all sorts of narratives that they propagate, but also cliches and ideas that we have. It's interesting when someone expresses an original thought and behaves differently. What I think you'll find fascinating is, I have reached out to a whole range of people on the channel. So when I reach out to
a whole range
of people, yeah. Yeah. So when I reach out to Ukrainians, and this is me just trying to rationalize something. This isn't empirical evidence, but it seems to me that when I reach out to academics in the UK and Europe, or even historians and analysts and experts, almost all of them connect with me immediately. And at least 50% will agree, again, almost straight away, to come on the channel. It's an extraordinary high success rate. And that's because I write a personalized message. I don't write a sort of boilerplate kind of thing. I look at what they've written recently. I quote back what they've written to them and say, look, this is a fantastic article, blah, blah, blah. We have common connections. This is the channel. This is what it's for. I'd love to have you on. Here's some recent guests. So it ticks a whole load of boxes, right? Like, I'm really interested in you as an expert. And here's proof that, I'm aware of what you've done. Here's validation that there's people you've heard of that have come on. And this formula works really, really well. It also works just as well with Ukrainians, whether they're activists, politicians, or whatever. And it may be because it's time of war, but I think there's something more going on here. I reach out, they connect, I invite, they say yes. They may not be quite so confident in English, or often Ukrainians will say, well, can you send me the topics in advance? Because and this is more of a language thing, they just want to feel they can do a bit of preparation. But generally, what's going on here is I think that people have a sense of generosity, but they have an idea of opportunity. They look at it and they see this as an opportunity for the channel. They see it as an opportunity for themselves. They also unconsciously perhaps see this as an opportunity to have an impact in terms of values outside of themselves. This may not be a benefit that directly accrues to them, but they see a civic or societal benefit in doing this activity. In that respect, Ukrainians seem to me absolutely, European, Western in that way, because it's like, yes, I'll do it. And it's almost an unconscious thing, right? This isn't just about me and my audience and what I can benefit in the short term. It's more strategic. It's broader than that. People unconsciously, I think, buy into this idea. I have written to numerous Russians, and I kind of break my clause a little bit here, in that usually I just reach out to people whose views I respect and agree with, because I'm an activist, not a journalist. But I have reached out to a whole load of Russians whose views I don't necessarily agree with, but I think might be interesting to debate these on the channel. And I can say to you, almost none of them ever get back. And if they do, they string you along for a little bit and then go quiet.
Was it even a single one who came to your channel and really did an interview or debate with you?
In this respect, and this is interesting, if they're going to do it, they agree straight away and then they come on and do it. So, for instance, Garry Kasparov has come on. And, I found out how to reach through to him and people I knew that he knew. And once I'd actually got through to him, he agreed and it was a done deal, and he came on the channel, and it just took a couple of days from him becoming aware of the channel and me to agreeing it, recording it, publishing it. So if it's going to happen, it happens quickly. Once people start putting in, blockers like, oh, I'll get back to you, or send me some more information, or I'll get back to you next week, the longer it goes on and the more stages of this you have, the less likely it is to happen. But the big difference here, I think, is that Americans, Europeans, Canadians, Brits, Ukrainians will tend to get back to you straight away. And mostly, they agree and they see the opportunity, and then it's just about the fine detail. Most of the Russians, I have to say, these are the ones who are more in activism and politics. The academic ones tend to agree and come on. But if it's, politics and activism, they just haven't responded. And I might have written to them 3 or 4 times through every single platform that they appear on, and it's just tumbleweed. It's nothing. And I've investigated this quite a lot and behind the scenes, and I'll put the idea out there that I just don't think they think in a civic sense. They don't see the opportunity outside of their own personal fame and influence. They don't see the world in the way that you or I do, and they don't see it as opportunity. They see it in rather a sort of narrow perspective. Now, some people say this is unfair, and they may just be afraid of, the tyranny and whatever of their system and retribution. But these are people who are already in the public eye. These are people who are already broadcasting a lot in Russian, which is a much higher risk for them than broadcasting English. So I don't think that's the reason. I don't think fear is the reason at all. I think it's something, unfortunately, which demonstrates to me that there really is no sense of society.
Yeah, and narrow-mindedness, right? It's of some sort.
And maybe not a democratic culture, because, it's all very well appearing on a channel where you're not challenged, where you can talk and go blah, 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 blah. But if you're going to be challenged, if you're going to be made to think, that might sound a little bit arrogant, but if they know that certain parts of their, mythology or ideas are going to be challenged quite aggressively, they won't appear. It has to be said, though, I've also approached people like Boris Johnson numerous times and got polite declines. So there may also be a factor that politicians generally are less open to being challenged in the public sphere. But, I've had plenty of Ukrainian politicians come on, so it's not a guarantee.
Well, yeah, politicians are different. I have amazing questions and comments on what you just said, but we gathered here not to just talk, but also raise money for Ukrainian army, right? Let's mention it and check our... here's the Silicon Curtain fundraiser, and
that's my fundraiser link. I'm going to get your fundraiser link up too, because we're doing both, and you've actually got a bigger target than me.
Yeah, and when we began the stream, you had 38 donations and 2,550, almost €2. Let's see if it grown. No, not yet, guys. Please make Jonathan, well, satisfied probably, and make a donation or two to that campaign. So, Jonathan, what unit is yours?
Oh, this is a great question. I'm going to have to look at the landing page to remind myself of. So it is 237th Battalion, 129th Brigade Aerial Reconnaissance Unit. So I don't know too much about them, but what I'm hoping to do, not hoping to do, what I will do is when we complete this fund, Jonathan MS and I, because he's already, got his first truck, we are actually going to drive these over to Lviv, and we are going to meet the guys who, armor plate them, battle proof them, and so on. And we're going to go and make a film about how these vehicles are converted. So help to get this, purchased, because we will be coming over and seeing how it's all done and providing proof. I think it's really important to have this transparency and the proof. So raise the money and.
Here's what Wikipedia says. Sorry to interrupt you, Jonathan, but here's what it says about your brigade. Now, 129th Separate Brigade of Territorial Defense from Kryvyi Rih. They are located there, Dnipropetrovsk Oblast. You know that Russians reached Kryvyi Rih in the beginning of the full-scale invasion. Almost reached. I'm not sure if they reached it or almost reached it, but those long columns, they stretched, one of them stretched up, all the way to the Kryvyi Rih. And I think that brigade might be engaged in fighting since the first days. And they have an awesome coat of arms. There are two swords, or like sabers, and there's a star. Is it a possibility here in StreamYard to show it on the screen?
It maybe can be. Yeah, let's figure out if I can give you control over it. This is
I can actually share my screen.
I'm familiar with. Yes.
Yeah, let me try to share it. Share screen. I will choose which one to share. This one, yes. And you need to allow it. Yes. So here it is. Here's the coat of arms. I think people can see it. We actually can check it because I have a tab opened here. Yeah, people can see it. Here it is. The two sabers and the fortress. And of course it is in yellow and blue, and the star there. I wonder what the star represents. But it might also have something to do with the coat of arms of Kryvyi Rih or Dnipropetrovsk Oblast.
Am I correct to think this is Zelensky's hometown, Kryvyi Rih?
Yeah, it is. Exactly. So a brigade that was defending his hometown, and now I wonder where they are engaged. And if on that video, they might actually be saying that. Do you think we might be watching that video?
Yes, if I can figure out how
I think maybe even I can present it. I just wonder if the sound will be going.
Yeah,
but even if it's not going to be going through, we have the subtitles there. Let's see. Let's make it a full screen. I cannot do it a full screen here, but on YouTube I can make a bigger picture. Yeah, so we are the fighters. And so they don't tell us. Oh, sorry, this one should not be there because it's a recursion then. So they are holding the lines. They did not say where. They just said that we're holding the lines against the occupiers, invaders, and we need a pickup truck to deliver us to the positions. As you can see, they're somewhere in a dugout. We call it a blindage here in Ukraine. Pretty awesome, guys. You can help these guys, and you can see they're not in the fancy gear. They are not some special forces. They are simple soldiers, Ukrainian ones from 129th Brigade of Territorial Defense. And you know what, Jonathan? I don't know if you know it, but the brigades of territorial defense are the least equipped, and the government is putting them as a lowest priority. Did you know that?
I didn't know, but you can sort of see by the uniforms. You can also infer it, as you say, by the uniforms there. Why is that? Is it because these guys are just going to carry on? They're not going to walk away whether they've got the best equipment or not. Does the government sort of in some ways taking advantage of their willingness to fight?
I don't think so. I just think that first of all, our resources are limited, and our government cannot equip all the brigades we need to equip now because our partners did some they took some obligations and they did not follow them, right? You know that. Zelensky constantly mentions that in his interviews that
he does.
Yeah,
I believe him at face. I take that at face value. I don't think he consciously lies in any of his. He might not give the complete picture, but I think he's learned that any falsehoods will backfire very badly. So I take his words very seriously, actually.
Yeah, me too. And I believe him in this. And I just see how partners act in terms of military aid to Ukraine. But let's get back to territorial defense. So we have the limited amount of equipment, and elite who is doing, completing and performing the hardest tasks, like our airborne, like our Marines, they should be equipped first. That's logical. I understand why our army is doing that, and our Ministry of Defense is doing that, because when they make the Kursk incursion, they cannot be unequipped, right? Or under-equipped. And this is why it goes like that, and the territorial defense were meant to defend regions that they are from, right? So they would need to defend Kryvyi Rih and Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, this 129th Brigade. But instead, since we lack men, since we lack brigades, equipped brigades, these brigades should be engaged in Donetsk region, in Luhansk Oblast, and also sometimes in Kursk. So we basically just, they are the lowest priority because they are not used as for what they primarily were needed to be used, you see? And they are hence under-equipped, and I'm really happy for you and really glad that you actually helping one of the territorial defense brigades, because I am my cars are one of them is for the airborne, those who are not really under-equipped, and the second one is for the 14th Brigade. 14th Brigade is not, I would say, not fully equipped, though they are not the highest priority. They are not the elite, but still mechanized brigade, they are somewhere in between the elite, the Marines and Airborne, and territorial defense. So I'm helping those two, but also we're helping an elite. Why do I say I? Me and my community. I need to correct myself there. Well, a leader of my community, so sometimes I say I, but when I say that, I mean my amazing community rollers. Thank you for all the donations. So let me actually, I'm not sure that your page is getting updated. Yeah, we had one more donation and around 100 more euros to your campaign. Congrats. We just made a difference. A small one.
Yeah.
But
I find community posts work as well. I don't know how you find that. I mean, this is sort of relatively new to me, and also we're running two fundraisers at the same time. Like you've got numerous on the go, but we're fundraising to make a film, and we're fundraising obviously for the trucks. And then, hopefully, when we come to deliver that truck to Lviv, then that will produce a lot more material, and we can keep the fundraiser going. Now, that trip itself could be a fundraiser for an additional truck, and I think that sort of filming on the ground will be quite compelling. I've not made it to Kiev, I have to admit, so it may well be in that same trip I get to go from Lviv to Kiev. Yeah.
I would love to meet you here, because I know that you've been to Ukraine, but not here in Kyiv, so we still have to meet. And yeah, as I told you just now, I'm excited for that.
That would be
Here
great.
on the screen, I don't know if you're still presenting it. Do you present?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
presenting.
thank
Yeah,
you.
everyone can see that.
So Break the Ukrainians campaign, which is Break the Ukrainians community campaign. I'm not doing it alone. I'm doing it together with my community. As I told you, we raise funds for 82nd Air Assault Brigade, but Airborne is another way to call it. And 14th Brigade. Actually, Karma, this unit, we helped them in the beginning of this year with NAFA truck. And I know the commander of that. It's actually a whole company already of different drone teams. You know, they operate FPVs, bombers like Vampire, some wings for reconnaissance, Mavics, all sorts of drones. And that the commander of that brigade, Victor, I have an interview with him. It was not the beginning of the year. It was like, okay, spring. It was March, still the beginning of the year. But we, I interviewed him. Such a great guy from Berdyansk. He is fighting to get his homeland liberated, deoccupied. I love Berdyansk. I don't know if I told you, but when I lived in occupation in 2014, in 2019 it was already, and I went to Berdyansk since I loved it a lot to get married there and not in occupation. It was important for me to do it in Ukraine. It was important for me to do it in the favorite town of mine there in Berdyansk. It was so cool, and I really am upset that Russians occupied it and that we were not able to receive enough weapons in 2022, in the late 2022, to keep the pace, keep the momentum of the counteroffensive, and to not just sit and wait there for the next transfer, or how do you call it, shipment of the military aid to arrive until the very summer 2023. We lost so much time back then.
So many opportunities lost to push Russians back. But I wanted to ask you, because this is probably one of the most difficult questions which has started to come up, and it seems that after 3 years of war, and indeed the sort of fear that many people have that Europe and the US will carry on being relatively weak through the next year, so Ukraine gets enough to survive still, but doesn't get enough to push Russia back. We've got all these conversations about negotiations, and I think you and I have probably got the same point of view on whether to trust any piece of paper Russia signs. It's not just Putin. I mean, it's worth less than toilet paper, in fact. But is the mood changing a little bit in that people thinking, look, for now at least, Donetsk, Luhansk, and the small part of Kherson and Zaporizhia, which are under, are people thinking, look, we'll get them back one day. This isn't forever, but for now, it's more important to freeze the lines of contact. That's certainly something that behind closed doors, I think European politicians have almost succumbed to this idea. What's the mood in Ukraine, especially from people from the East?
Well, in my opinion, whatever we do or whatever our partners force us to do, either it's going to be the freeze of the conflict once again, which is not a conflict but a war. I hate the word conflict, and when people use it, it's just there's no conflict in genocide. Genocide is in particular the annihilation of one nation by another. And Russia is doing that, and we have no how do you call it, dispute territories, right? We have territories that are occupied by Russia for a long time, that Russia started calling it their own, and they start calling their territories their own right in half a year after that they occupy it, like it happened with Zaporizhia and Kherson Oblast. But my point is coming to that when we freeze this war, and we already have just 9 years ago experience of freezing it in 2015. What happened after that? Russia came in 2022 and invaded from much bigger number of directions, and Russia occupied more of our territory. This will happen the next time. So this what we should not do under any circumstance. And in Ukraine right now there is also an opinion rising that Russia won't necessarily wage the next phase of its war against the whole Europe in Ukraine. Ukrainian frontline may stay frozen for, let's say, for the next 10 years, but already in 5 years, Russia may invade Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. I wonder, okay, there are some crazy scenarios when they can, let's say, join with Hungary and invade Moldova. It just popped up in my mind. No one said that out loud yet, but I'm thinking of some shit like that, because you can expect anything from Orban wearing, the scarf with a great Hungary, the empire, which contains part of Romania, right, and and Moldova also. So
that's it. And as his regime starts to unwind, he might need to go down the Georgia Dream route. He might need to go more authoritarian.
Exactly.
What's the best way of consolidating a regime? Drop out of the EU, start a war, ramp up internal repression. I mean, we know how that mechanic works now.
Exactly. So, not necessarily next stage is going to be Ukraine. If NATO really gets into the, let's call it the break, right? And Trump really decides not to support Europeans much with American troops, then European part of NATO will be weakened a lot. And it's going to be probably a lack of response from US if Putin will invade one of the NATO countries. And that means limited resources of European countries like Germany and France will be sent to those countries who's going to be invaded. But that might be too late, because we see the speed, the pace, and territories of many countries around Russia are smaller than Ukrainian territory, and it also buys time. We have a bigger territory, and if let's say our Luhansk Oblast was occupied in the first days of full-scale invasion, the biggest part of it in just a few days or a few weeks, same can happen with Estonia, and European countries with their slow bureaucracy procedures won't even be in time to send artillery there, or artillery shells, or enough reconnaissance drones. And that is a big danger for the whole Europe right now. It's not that far from Europe, the war. And they, a lot of countries in Europe may be next, without Putin completely occupying Ukraine, completely breaking us down. We can still be, sovereign state while European countries will be invaded. We may still be in active or frozen war with Russia when European countries will start being occupied. And it's a lot depends on Trump's actions. We will see what Trump is going to be doing and how he's going to be behaving, because he wants to stay unpredictable as he is, and kind of put pressure on many leaders in the world, even his allies, to tell them that they cannot just use him, because when someone is predictable, other partners can also maybe somehow abuse their politics. Hungary has no army. Well, that's good to hear. And where are you from, Just? Are you from Hungary? Because why is Fink so personally invested in destroying Russia that he does a daily video dedicated to it? Yeah, that's a good
What
question.
should I say? I mean, I wonder who this individual is. I wonder if, it'll be clearer if he understands.
To what those videos dedicated to, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
It is. That's what I do. I am dedicated. No, I'll be completely honest. I think Russia only has a chance to developing any kind of national organic culture or democracy, and we're talking about a centuries-long process here, if it breaks apart. There's no other way in which it will emerge unless it's broken apart.
And you see, it's not about Russia then. It's about Moscovia, Tatarstan, Buryatia, Dagestan, Chechnya, which is Ichkeria. I hope it's going to be Ichkeria in the future, not Chechnya. Without Ramzan Kadyrov also, who is just Putin's, Kremlin's dog. Also Yeltsin's dog, his father was. And those are, those really... Okay, I have a question for you, Jonathan. Have you already invited some minority leaders I heard there is a woman who is a voice of Free Tatarstan people. I'm not sure I know her name, but I definitely have seen her on Twitter, and I've seen that she wants to be, for Tatarstan to be free, liberated from Russian occupation, and to be a sovereign state. Have you maybe not her, maybe some other leaders?
Yeah, I've had one on who is a journalist and correspondent who is from one of the minorities in Russia. I'd have to look up which one, because it's whereas she's brought up in one territory, actually she's a minority of another community. But she's an expert. She writes a lot of articles about resistance movements and so on, and the political dynamic within the republics, because of course it's a lot more complex. They have their own authoritarianism in each of these republics. They have their own Moscow puppets, but some of them have more autonomy than others. So it's quite a complex patchwork. Very reminiscent of 19th century Russian imperialism. They had a different system in Poland to Finland, and different levels of autonomy, and divide and conquer isn't a one size fits all approach. They're very cleverly often will adapt it to local circumstances. So, but yeah, I mean, I've had Belarusian dissident on. I've got another one coming up soon, but not too many out of the minorities you mentioned there. And yeah, it could be an interesting thing to do. I don't know how many people out there could convincingly talk in English and express themselves, but there must be a few.
Yeah, I actually have a few reliable people on Twitter who research some of that, and who may be able to give you a hint. Of course, they should speak English, I understand. I will ask them, those two experts in particular. One of them, guys, I will be open about it. Yana Furi from Project Constantine. Do you know her?
I'm connected to her on Twitter, and of course, I've been following the work of Project Constantine, and of course, the tragic death of the guy who inspired all of that. It would be good to get her on. Yeah, she's definitely on my list.
Well, Yana is the one who is based on understanding what Russia is, just like you, and what Russians really are. And she is also good at knowing people there. So sometimes if someone asks me, for example, to be a guest, to come to my stream, or if I am trying to call someone to the stream, I first go to her and to one other person and ask, do you know something about that person? What are they doing on Twitter or some other social platform? She's very energetic, very, hardworking, and she kind of researches a lot and knows stuff on Twitter, knows about the scandals, because a lot of people on Twitter who seem to pretend Ukrainian supporters, they unfortunately just profit from Ukraine. They never provide reports about their fundraisers. There were some huge scandals this year happening with some huge communities who raised millions of dollars and never provided a single fucking report. I apologize. Pardon my French.
Oh, no, absolutely. And I've been following some of those. I mean, they're very toxic. And then when people actually demand transparency, which they've got a right to do, some people can get very defensive about it. I mean, this is why up until now, I've always put fundraisers through third parties. And this is why I like the Trucks for Ukraine so much. It's like the money, I don't even get a sniff of it. You know, I'm nowhere near the money, and it's got full transparency. You know, you click the link, you donate. I don't get to see, I'm not part of any of that except promoting it and getting the funds in. The film project is slightly different. But again, what we're doing with that one is, you know, we've got a clear target, and we're going to provide an itemized, you know, this is what you gave us, you know, $100,000, which is the target. Whether it exceeds that and gets 110, 120, whatever, we're going to say, okay, well, this is what we got. This is the end product, right? This is the film. You see there's a physical product at the end of it, but here's an itemized list of expenditure. You know, this went on camera, this went on transport, this went on this went on that. I think you just have to do that to have any credibility.
Have you seen the fundraiser reports I post weekly on my community?
I glanced at one of them. Yeah, I don't see them regularly, but I've definitely glanced at them, and I thought that was a fantastic idea.
Thank you, but it's still not the full transparency, because ideally I need to also show all the receipts for the equipment we buy, but sometimes it's impossible to provide receipt if it's a used car, you know, because a lot of soldiers, they buy used cars. No one goes to the you know, to the, we call them salons, like where you can buy a brand new car. No one does that. So sometimes it's impossible to really show how much money we're spent, and I'm not even shown that. You know, soldiers, I do what? I am not a classic volunteer. I never buy equipment myself. I ask soldiers to create those monobank jars where we collect money. Basically a separate bank account created specifically for a fundraiser. And we have those jars filled. I raise money for it. But soldiers are always buying equipment themselves. I ask them to provide receipts for the equipment that is bought, and I collect the database of those receipts. Everything is in the folder of the exact fundraiser. So if any of you guys, any of the viewers will ask, I can go and show you that. But I also am collecting that for the tax service, because they at some point will start checking the volunteers. I'm officially registered, an official registered volunteer in Ukraine. So I will be also, you know, in the end of this year, I became one this year. And in the end of the year, I will be given kind of a declaration of the money I received for the fundraisers and that I donated them. So I'm reporting about my work. And this is why I also need to collect the database of proofs for the tax service if they want to check me someday. And my bank was already checking me, by the way. I was checked by the financial monitoring of my bank, and they approved me. They gave me the status of official volunteer here in Ukraine. So all is legal, all is registered, and all is also transparent. But still, I am trying to reach the level of the full transparency. I am transparent right now. People sometimes joke, especially rollers, they say, Rick is so transparent, you can see through him. You know? And once my camera was not focusing on me, and I was very, very bright, and I said, guys, it is happening. It was a sunny day, you know, I'm getting transparent. This is what I think every donator in the world should demand from the fundraisers. They should demand from them to provide the reports, to at least post the videos of the units who received the truck thanking people for raising funds, because huge money is being raised. And donations are different. I always say that there are no small donations because you need not to hesitate to send $1, $2, $5. Every bit helps. But there are some huge donations. Like there are not small donations, but there are also huge donations. Some people donate 10, 20, 30,000 euros.
Yeah.
And
well, Jake Bro, must have had quite a few of those in order to reach the astronomical sums. I find it interesting, how different audiences are different engaged. I think my audience, because I never really run these kind of fundraisers, my audience isn't sort of tuned into that necessarily. It's not something we've done before. It's a learning process. But it's something I think it would be good to do more of next year. I'm going to have to sort of jump in a second. I am about to interview another fantastic participant in Ukraine Civic Society, Anastasia Paraskevova.
So it's today?
It's today. It's now. I'm going to have to jump off and jump straight into that.
Just before you went there, I want to ask people to donate to our fundraiser with car for Ukraine, Rig the Ukrainians community, because 2 more donations people made to your campaign during the stream. Thank you, guys. But not a single donation was made during this stream to our campaign. Guys, please help this part. Can I show it on the screen real quick?
Yeah, there, show it on the screen. I've got the comment up there so people can copy the comment.
I already show it.
Well.
Thank you. So here it is, guys. We're raising funds for 2 trucks for 82nd Air Assault Brigade and for 14th Mechanized Brigade. You can get awesome pins by donating over 100 euros. Look, it's just awesome. I would love to have one. So please donate to this campaign. Please donate more to Jonathan's campaign. And I still haven't mentioned the campaign we have with Roman Trochimets, and Jonathan actually allowed me to show it, so I'm going to show it right now.
Definitely.
We're raising funds. There's a big campaign there for 4 trucks. On 69th Infantry Brigade, they are more expensive because, first of all, they provide them with electronic warfare devices. And secondly, they are not based in Ukraine. This is why they kind of, spend more money to bring them to Ukraine, these trucks. This is also the patches should be produced, sent, all of that requires funds. You should realize that. This is why one truck right now there costs 21,000 euros, more than we pay for 2 trucks here on Car for Ukraine. But still, I worked with those guys for more than a year now, and they're legit, and they provide a really good quality trucks. So we have 3 awesome patches there. Instead of pins, like here on the Car for Ukraine campaign, you can get a patch for donating over 100 euros. There's a free Azov patch, there's ultimate resistance patch with Roman Trochimets' face on it. We're doing this campaign together with him, and Javelin patch as part of my collection of retro wave patches, and they look like this. HIMARS was the first one introduced last year already, and now we have the last one in collection for now, Javelin. It is connected to Roman because he was a Javelin operator in 2022, 2023. Also an Anlo operator, and he likes that one more. But so we don't have time at all anymore, right, Jonathan?
No, we're out of time on here. But I think we should schedule more of these, because I've realized that I can do a live stream and it doesn't necessarily prevent the interviews and the news reviews going live later in the day. YouTube seems to be okay with, if I was to publish 2 interviews in a day, it tends not to like that much. But it seems that a live stream and a pre-recorded video is absolutely fine. They don't seem to affect each other negatively. So I think I will do more of these. I'd love to join you and Roman to help with this fundraiser in the new year. And let's make this into more of a regular thing, because I think it's so important to help Ukraine.
And I still had so many things to tell you and ask you about Russians, because that is a topic that, you see, I also see these streams with you as an opportunity or pre-recorded interviews to also have some, let's call it the other side of the picture for like on your channel, because you call Russians here, but you also call Ukrainians here. And I'm so happy that Anna is here today. But let's have more conversations and hear the opinions of us Ukrainians too, what we think about those Russians. Huh?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Very sensitive to, imposing a Western narrative on it, very sensitive to, not trying to impose, Russian points of view onto Ukrainians, vice versa. I mean, it's delicate, but I think having, some of the historical context and having all these conversations, helps to make me a little more sensitive to that, but constantly learning as well. So I think these are important. I'm going to jump now, but let's do this again. If we don't speak before the new year, have a great, productive, relaxing, restful holiday, trauma-free, and we'll catch up in the new year.
Well, I'm going to be working through all the holidays, so maybe we see each other working there too.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'll be doing videos every day. As someone kindly pointed out, it is my mission to bring down the Russian Empire, and I'm doing it one video at a time, day in, day out. So we'll join you soon, Rick. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
For everyone in the lovely audience. Yes.
Live long, prosper, and donate, as I say. Live long, prosper, and donate. Thank you.
Cheers.
Jonathan, it was great to talk to you.
Speak soon. Bye.
Yeah, have a great day. Bye.